Today I try and build myself a loco cradle, fit a decoder to a brand new Dapol Class 73, and help out a Duchess with a limp. Hi everyone, I'm Martin and welcome back to Donnington Castle Model Railway. Now today's video is going to be a little bit different in that we're going to focus on the locos and rolling stock for the layout. Now there's a reason why I've not really looked at this on the channel before, and that's because my primary objective was to get the layout built. But an opportunity has arisen to kind of change that a little bit, and I'll talk in a little bit more detail about what these videos are going to include. But since the last layout update, I got so many amazing comments and feedback from all of you. I've kind of been going back through that and just kind of reflecting on the layout and just kind of checking some of my kind of assumptions and kind of ideas that I had right at the start. And I won't kind of divert and talk about that now, but that's been a really great exercise. It also meant that I focused a little bit more on what I need to be doing, which is laying the track. So based on some of your suggestions, I put together a list of all the things I need to do, and I've been kind of working my way through laying track. Now, I've been filming that as I go, so you will get a chance to see that, but I'm not going to release that until I can show you trains running on the upper level. So that's a kind of a little incentive for me to kind of stay on track with that. And the good thing is it's meant I've not been distracted by other side projects. So you might say, well, why are you now focusing on your locos? Aren't you just getting distracted? And the answer is that it's not quite a distraction in that when I do lay track, particularly when I'm laying super elevation, I tend to work in small sections, and that means there are kind of times when there's glue drying and I kind of can't really do anything else on the layout. So in those moments, I'm turning my attentions to some other kind of locos and kind of wagons and coaches and things like that. So going forwards, I'm going to focus on those in videos. They won't be kind of regular, they'll be kind of intermittent depending on when I get a chance to do some of that stuff. And in them we'll cover all sorts of things from fitting decoders to messing around with decoder settings, putting crew in locos, a bit of weathering, loads into wagons, all the kind of things that you would do with your kind of fleet. My focus really is about doing that in a way that kind of maybe shows people who are newer to the hobby the kind of things that you need to do on that front, and to try and also give people a little bit of confidence that you can kind of get stuck in and do some of that stuff yourself. I know some people like to kind of send their locos off, for example, to have decoders fitted. I want to try and kind of delve into some of those subjects in a little bit more detail and just kind of remove any of the kind of mysticism surrounding them, meaning that you can make your own decisions then about whether you want to kind of get stuck in to doing some of this stuff or whether you prefer to get kind of experts to do that for you. Because I know there's a huge pressure with modern locos, lots of little bits. You open them up. In the past, you'd open a loco up and there'd be a motor, maybe a suppressor and some wires for the pickups. Now you open a loco up and there's a kind of a wealth of circuit boards and kind of lighting and all sorts of other bits and pieces like that, which can be a little bit intimidating, I realize. So in these videos, I'll try and kind of make that feel a little bit kind of more familiar to you. And as I say, hopefully kind of make you feel a bit more confident about doing some of that stuff. Now, it's not my intention to replicate what other people on YouTube are already out there doing. So I really enjoy, for example, watching Double O Bill when he kind of goes through and services locos and does kind of a detailed strip down and kind of fault finding. I'm not looking to emulate that kind of stuff because he does a great job. And I think if you want that, then kind of go and look at channels like that. I'm going to be focused on the things I need to do in order to kind of get things up and running. So for example, if there's a very obvious and easy way of fixing a solution with a loco, I'm not going to go to the trouble of kind of fully disassembling it. I'm just going to kind of do what's needed, talk maybe a little bit around some of the other kind of things you might want to think about in that situation. But also then where, if possible, kind of then divert you off to other videos where you can then go and look a bit more detail about that particular model or kind of that kind of loco and stuff like that. So it'll be a little bit of experimentation as we kind of get going and can kind of find my feet with doing this kind of stuff. But in terms of today's video, 3 things I'm going to be doing. Firstly, up to this point, I have been walking a very kind of tightrope in that I do a lot of my loco maintenance by using the clamshells provided with locos because they kind of fit the locos. But at some point, that is all going to end in tears, and therefore I really do need a good loco cradle. So as with all projects, why go out and kind of do the simplest thing when you can massively over-engineer something in order to get what you need? So I'm going to go through building a loco cradle myself, see how that turns out. And then there's a couple of locos I need to look at. One is a brand new Dapol CLass 73. And I don't normally buy new locos. I normally find them too expensive. But this was actually 50% off asking price and cheaper than a lot of pre-owned versions of it. So it seemed a little bit kind of silly not to go with that. So I need to get that with a decoder fitted in it and tweak a few of the CVs using JMRI. So that's what I'll do. I've then been, I wouldn't say gifted, I've been loaned a family model that was bought off eBay, and it's primarily a static display. But it is DCC fitted and it is sound fitted and it's supposed to work. And it doesn't quite do all of those things right now. So I'm going to take a look at that and hopefully get that back working again. So I hope you enjoyed something a little bit different. I'm going to get stuck in now and build myself a loco cradle so that I can actually start working on locos safely. So there's no particular need to design this in Tinkercad because I'm going to be making this manually, but I just thought it was a useful exercise just to get a sense of what this is going to be like. So the black is our high density foam that I'm going to be using. That's going to give the kind of rigidity of this. And then the grey, there's 3 inserts here. These are going to be our softer foam, which should then hopefully kind of cushion and protect the model. As you can see, let's kind of lift these out. They're 2 centimeters thick, and they'll just kind of slot in like that. This is 1 centimeter thick, and that will kind of just run along the bottom. So with a good sense of what we need, let's go and get the foam and start cutting. Now, I've seen lots of different cradles that people use for ones you can buy in the shops, through to all sorts of homemade items like Sam from Sam's Trains uses that edging that you use to protect the edge of pictures in transport. Double O Bill uses a kind of a strip cut out of a sponge for washing your car. I'm going to have a go at making one out of a spare piece of foam. Now, this is the foam you use to create tool storage. So the idea is that it's coloured underneath, and then you kind of lay your tools on top, cut around them, and then you kind of peel back the black layer, and then it kind of gives you a hole to put your tools in. It's left over from a project at work, so I thought I would put it to use. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be cutting a strip off down here. I'll then kind of cut out a hole in there for the cradle, and then I've got some, so this is actually quite coarse foam, and then I've got some softer foam that I'm going to use to then kind of line that. So I'm going to cut it out a bit bigger than I would normally need to, and then use this to kind of line it just to give a much kind of softer kind of interior to that. So I will cut that out, and then once I've got that in a good place, I will come back with a ruler and just show you what some of the measurements are. There you can see the block I've cut, and this is 12 centimeters across by 30 long. I've then marked out a 7.5 centimeter gap in the middle here, which looks a bit wide with the loco on there, but once we've added some of this foam on either side, then that will give us a nice soft cradle in there. This foam cuts really well with a knife, so I've just used a Stanley knife on this. And the great thing about this is that it comes in layers. So once you kind of, I'm trying to do this one hand now while I'm holding the camera. So once you've kind of cut, you can then peel this back in layers, and it should give you an even depth. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this down. Let's get a ruler. Take this down to one of the levels that's kind of about 3 centimeters down there. Whoops, sorry. And then that should give us a nice deep kind of cutout, I guess, the best word for it. And then we can then obviously line the bottom of it as well with some of this stuff, just so we've got lots of protection and padding all around. So I'll get on with that and I'll come back when it's done. So that's now cut out. Hopefully you can see how easy it is to get a nice level surface in there because of the layers in the foam. There's a little bit of a kind of a technique to it, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy to do. So next step is to put some of that other foam as a lining on it, and then figure out what I'm going to stick that down with. And there is our cradle. We have these 2 centimeter thick pieces along the side. It's not all glued in yet, by the way. And then I cut that in half to give us 1 centimeter down the bottom. So when we pop loco in, you can see that gives us a nice firm hold all the way along. There's plenty of kind of give in that, but not too much so that we don't get lots of rocking about and stuff. So, and the kind of the coarseness of this shouldn't cause any damage or scratching to the model. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm just going to glue all that down and leave that to dry, and then we can get on with some maintenance. Our first task today is going to be to get this Dapol CLass 73 ready to run on the layout. I do have another Dapol 73. It's not great because out the box, the lights were set the wrong way around. So you have to kind of, so I kind of fixed that in the decoder. But also you couldn't turn the cab lights off, which is quite frustrating. So hopefully this being from the new batch, some of them issues will have been fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out of the box, get it in the cradle, and I'll go through the process of just adding the decoder into it. I've already taken a look at the instructions. I don't normally kind of complain about this stuff, but in 3 pages of text, there were like 5 or 6 spelling and grammar mistakes that you just kind of pick up just from reading through it. So I sincerely hope the model's better quality than whoever they got to just literally read through that. I mean, come on, Dapol. Just it's basic QA. That really frustrates me, as you can probably tell. But anyway, enough about that. I'll get the loco out of the box and flip it over into the all-new cradle, and we can then start the process of fitting a decoder. I'm going to fit a Hatton's 21 pin into it. I use these all the time. They were really good value. I've never really had any problems with them, and hopefully they'll work in this okay. Right, that's the body off. So the body was held on by 4 screws to either end. Just need to move the bogey slightly to get at those, and then it lifted straight out, which is great. So next job's going to be to take off the blanking plate, which is here, and then just pop the decoder on there. So there's the decoder put in place, nice and easy. What I'll do now is I will just give this a test on the layout, because it'll be set to address number 3, just to check that everything's working okay before we then do any programming and put the body on and stuff like that. So I'll show you how that works. There we go, all looking good, running up and down. If it doesn't work at this stage, there are a few things you might want to try, but don't really have time to talk about those. Maybe it's something we can come back to in future. But with this model, all looks good. So there we have body back on. That was all nice and painless. If we look at the default function settings, you might just be able to see that 0 turns the cab light on. Let me just see what happens if I change direction, whether that flicks to the other end. Yep, it does. But that's not on permanently, so that's a good start. 1, I believe, controls the rear light. And then 2 is the front light. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to go into DecoderPro and JMRI and change all those around so they're in something slightly better. What I will also do in there is I'll need to set kind of speed profiling, so acceleration and deceleration rates, and start voltage, and change the number. My numbering system is to take the first 2 and last 2 digits generally. And then if there's a conflict for any reason, then kind of deal with it after that. So this will become address 7302. But to start with, it's all looking good, running nice and smoothly. And so we'll get this into DecoderPro and get things all sorted in there. So as you can see, that's now down onto the programming track. So I'll fire up the laptop, start up DecoderPro, and then we'll get it added to the fleet and make all those changes. Let me very quickly show you the setup I've got here. So the laptop is connected to my Digitrax controller via USB. I will do a video talking about how all this is set up in much more detail. So just for now, all that you need to understand is that the laptop is talking to the Digitrax controller. and it then sends messages out to that programming track, which are then picked up by the decoder in the loco. Here we are inside DecoderPro, and you can see my existing locos in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on New Loco, and then I'm going to read the type of the decoder from it, even though I know what it is. I always find this is a useful thing to do. Now what that will do is that will read kind of various CVs, and as you can see from the cutaway, the loco does a little bit of a kind of jig backwards and forwards as that's going on. And we can see that it's picked up. It is a Hatton's 4-function decoder. So as I said, the address for this is going to be 7302. I always turn DC operation off because I'm always going to operate that with DCC. And then I'm going to write that address value. Then if you open the comprehensive programmer inside DecoderPro, you'll then find a whole series of sheets where you get the user-friendly version of all the different aspects of configuration that you can make to the loco, rather than having to kind of deal with raw CVs. So what I'm doing here is I've gone through and I've set the acceleration and deceleration to values I know that I like with the Hatton's decoder. I set the starting voltage to 1 because I know it for Dapol CLass 73 that works. That's just basically so that it kind of starts moving on speed step 1 as I turn it up. Now this is the function map table that you can see here, and this shows you how the functions inside the decoder and the various wires that are connected to it map to the different F functions on your controller. So you'll notice before that F2 is your kind of toggle switch, and we don't want our lights on that because we obviously have to hold them down. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at which value is set to function 2, and then I'm just going then to flip that over onto function number 3. So I just take the values that are currently set to function 2, and function 3 is empty here, so I just move them down 1 and then click the Write All Changes on Sheet button, and that will then update those settings onto the decoder. With those changes, it means that our cab light is still on function 0, and one of our lights is on function 1, and then rather than the other one being on function 2, it's now on function 3, which means that it will stay on when we press the button. So nice and simple and an easy change to make. In DecoderPro, you also have access to the full list of CVs. So if you want to change them manually, you can read all of the values in from the decoder for each of the CV values. And then if you know which setting is which, you can just go in and manually change those over. So you really do have the best of both worlds when it comes to using DecoderPro. There is another loco where I need to go in and manually make some CV changes. So in a future episode, I'll come back and I'll show you that in a bit more detail. But I'd say don't let this kind of table of CV values scare you at all. DecoderPro, when you read the decoder type, makes it really, really easy to make changes without having to know all this stuff. And here we have our Dapol CLass 73 beginning its running in process. So this is not intended as a review in any way, shape or form, but that's really working quite nicely. And for the price that I paid, I'm really, really happy. I think when the worst thing you can say about a model is spelling mistakes on the instructions, then I think that's a good sign. And here's our final project for the day. This is a Hornby Duchess, City of Chester. It belongs to a family member and was bought on eBay. It has been DCC fitted with sound. It was suggested that was done by Rails of Sheffield. Now, I've had this out on the track and it works, but there's a decided limp and also the sound's not working. So I'm going to do a little bit of investigating and find out what's going on. It looks like it shouldn't be too difficult to fix. So let's get this out in the cradle and see how we get on. So when it comes to the issues with the sound, this is one example whereby I don't actually need to go into do too much debugging for this because looking underneath the loco, I spotted that this wire here had become detached. It's the thing that takes part of the power into the tender. So quick blob of solder, and then that was all fixed and working again. Now, when it comes to the limp, it might be fairly obvious what's going on here. When you look at the rods and valve gear, you can see that all is not as it should be. So I'll just freeze this here. You can see that one of the connecting rods is bent, and then also part of the rod on the valve gear is also bent. So those are going to have to be fixed. Now, I think what happens with a lot of steam locos is that people pick them up by the wheels and squeeze in on the rods. Then when the wheels turn and the rods clash with each other, and when they clash, they basically get stuck, and the force of the loco then can bend them out of shape. So I think that's what's happened here. What I'm going to do to fix this, I think that the rod on the valve gear, I can probably just straighten out with a pair of pliers because it doesn't look too bad. But the connecting rod is actually, I think, the main thing that's causing the limp here, and therefore I'm probably going to need to get a new one of those. Now that means that we're going to need to get the service sheet for this loco, which wasn't in the box, because I don't think they come with the... I don't think that models of this era come with the full kind of breakdown of spare parts. That's why it's not in there. So we're going to need to go and look online for that. So let's have a look for that now. I'm just searching here on Google for the service sheet for Hornby R2312. So the new model the shop have some of them on here, and then Duchess class in here. And we can see the service sheet. And then if we kind of zoom in a little bit, we can see the rods here, and then we should also see the valve gear up here. And then if we look down the bottom, we can see the list of the spares, so we can see the part numbers to search for here. And I've already had a look, and some of the spares for this loco are very rare these days. I suspect because rods and valve gear are very easy to break. So it wasn't easy to kind of find stuff. I did manage to find a set of the coupling rods, albeit for the weathered version, on eBay. So I picked those up, and with that I'll also get some kind of spare screws as well. And then in terms of the valve gear, I did also pick up a spare set of that. I'm not intending to change that unless fixing the connecting rod doesn't work, because I think just straightening that out, that's going to be fine. I think as long as the valve gear is not catching when it's running, it should be fine. But a bent connecting rod will stop the power being distributed from the driving wheels to the other wheels, and therefore I think that's the bit that's really causing the limp. So that's the bit I'm going to fix. And then hopefully we'll be in a good place. The last thing I want to do with this loco is just make sure all the pickups and wheels are clean. The wheels are actually quite clean, but the pickups I'm not so sure about. So I've just kind of removed the pony trucks and then the base keeper plate, which allows access to the pickups, which you can actually take out. You can't fully remove the base keeper plate because that's kind of wired in. Again, as per the age of these models, that was kind of the standard technique that Hornby used. The pickups were quite dirty, so I gave them a quick clean with a bit of IPA and put those back in. But also, while I was in there, I noticed that there was a lot of oil in here. And I think the default reaction when a model's not working is for people to reach for the oil. And I think what happens is then it's very easy to then kind of over-oil locos. So I suspect that seeing the limp, someone added a little bit too much oil. But that's all been now cleaned out. I'll pop the base keeper plate back on, and then we should be ready to give this a bit of a test. Just one thing to note, changing the connecting rod, I used the Hornby crank spanner to do that. My payment from the family member for fixing this was for them to buy me one of those, so I've now got one of those. It was very easy then to get the kind of the crank pins out and get those rods changed over. So you'll hopefully see the result in a second. And there we have our Class 73 and our Duchess all ready to run on the layout. I hope you enjoyed seeing that. It was certainly a lot of fun. I also now have a loco cradle that I can use, and we've got a 73 and a Duchess that can run around the layout, which is great. Now, in the process I've shown today, obviously there are lots of steps that I still need to do on those locos. I haven't talked about fitting crew, head codes, all manner of other things like weathering, things like that, which I haven't kind of really touched on. So those are all topics that I will be coming back to in future videos. But we'll see how kind of often those are, because again, my kind of real focus is on getting the track laid and the layout built as much as possible. So that's going to be kind of my next focuses. I'm also very conscious that I'm kind of halfway through a video on the kind of the wiring and the electrics for layout, in particular how I kind of do DC and DCC on the heritage line. So I just really need to kind of get that finished off as well and out so you guys can see that. But I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully there'll be some more kind of fiddling around with locos and rolling stock in the future, and I shall see you all soon. Bye-bye.